The Oval Office was alive with tension. Cameras flashed incessantly as Donald Trump strode in, signature tie perfectly in place, eyes scanning the room with a mix of calculation and authority. Behind him, South Korea's newly elected president entered with equal poise, a measured smile masking the weight of the agenda ahead. Advisors whispered into ears, aides shuffled papers nervously, and the press corps snapped photos in a frenzy, capturing every blink, every gesture, every subtle sign of intent. Two leaders, one agenda, billions at stake. Subscribe, stay connected to stories where leadership, strategy, and courage make history. Share, amplify moments of intelligence, integrity, and insight so others can learn and be inspired. Comment, reflect on the choices you'd make, the negotiations you face, and how preparation and calm resolve can change outcomes. The room vibrated with the kind of energy reserved for moments that could rewrite history. Trump's hand rested briefly on the resolute desk, a gesture both commanding and deliberate. The South Korean president tilted forward slightly, nodding in acknowledgement, as if signaling, "I know what's at stake, and I won't back down." Every expression told a story: confidence, caution, ambition, subtle challenge. The cameras caught it all: the slight raise of an eyebrow, the tightening of a jaw, the rapid-fire whispering between advisors. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, a tension that seemed to stretch time itself. Outside the Oval Office, the press was already framing the moment. Headlines poised to explode across networks, live streams capturing every second, social media buzzing with speculation. Viewers across the globe were just beginning to realize that they were witnessing more than a meeting. They were watching the prelude to a potential seismic shift in international trade. Trump spoke first, his tone firm but measured, opening the floor to discuss the complex, high-stakes agenda. The South Korean president responded with equal weight, signaling both cooperation and negotiation prowess. Every word, every nod, every pause carried implications that could ripple through markets, governments, and economies worldwide. And then a subtle, almost imperceptible shift. A glance exchanged between aides, a quick note passed, a whispered comment that seemed to carry more meaning than the official agenda itself. The air thickened. Something was about to happen. The cameras captured it all. The flashbulbs popped. Reporters leaned forward. Viewers at home sat up straight. But what happens in the next hour could reshape U.S.-South Korea trade forever. The cameras continued rolling, but the tension in the Oval Office was no longer just visible, it was palpable. The agenda at hand was deceptively simple on paper: trade agreements, tariffs, technology exchanges. But the implications stretched far beyond numbers on a ledger. Billions of dollars, entire industries, and even geopolitical alliances hung in the balance. Trump, known for his instinctive negotiating style, leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing as he assessed every subtle gesture from the South Korean president. Every nod, every pause, every phrase was a calculation, a test of strength and patience. Advisors scribbled notes frantically, aware that a single misstep could send markets tumbling or ignite international headlines. For the South Korean leader, the stakes were equally immense. South Korea's economy was intertwined with U.S. trade, technology, and defense commitments. Any perceived misalignment could ripple across supply chains, investor confidence, and diplomatic credibility. A handshake here, a word there, carried consequences measured not in days, but in decades. The world outside the Oval Office was already leaning in. Financial networks analyzed potential trade concessions. Journalists speculated on possible headline-making deals. Social media began to buzz with predictions, debates, and concerns about who might emerge victorious and what the victory would cost the average citizen. At the table, the conversation escalated. Trump emphasized American priorities with forceful clarity, driving home demands on intellectual property, automobile tariffs, and steel imports. The South Korean president responded with equal precision, highlighting the economic pressures at home, the delicate balance of domestic politics, and the importance of a fair, mutually beneficial agreement. Every pause became a battleground, every concession or refusal a potential headline. Advisors whispered options into ears, charts flickering on tablets, figures scrolling on screens. The room became a chessboard of negotiation, each move meticulously weighed. And beyond the room, the implications were staggering. Corporations recalculated projections. Exporters tracked every nuance. Allies and competitors watched, wondering if the negotiations would strengthen or strain U.S.-South Korea relations, or even shift the balance of power in East Asia. Yet amidst the tension, there was an unspoken realization. This was more than trade. It was credibility, influence, and strategic leverage distilled into a single room. Both leaders understood that the outcome could define not just economic policy, but the perception of their leadership on the global stage. Millions were watching, yet few could truly grasp the gravity of what was unfolding. Every gesture mattered. Every word could ripple across continents. And while cameras recorded the scene for the world, only those present could feel the electric intensity in the room. Millions tuned in, not realizing they were witnessing a moment that could rewrite the rules of global trade. To understand the gravity of the Oval Office showdown, one must understand Donald Trump himself, the man, the negotiator, the icon of high-stakes deal-making. Trump's career had long been defined by audacity. From the towering skyscrapers of New York to the glitzy halls of international business, he cultivated a reputation for boldness, for walking into a room and making others adjust to his pace, his style, his vision. In business, it was a mixture of bravado and calculation, of spectacle and leverage. But in trade negotiations, this persona carried both weight and risk. Time and again, Trump had approached negotiations as if they were games of chess, aggressive, unpredictable, and deeply strategic. Allies and adversaries alike had learned that his greatest strength was his willingness to push limits. Tariffs were not just taxes, they were signals, gambits designed to test, resolve, and create leverage. Deals were not mere agreements. They were theatrical statements that reshaped power dynamics in real time. Yet alongside his brilliance lay controversy. Critics accused him of brinkmanship, of impulsiveness, of prioritizing spectacle over sustainable outcome. Each deal he championed became a headline, each concession scrutinized, each victory analyzed for hidden costs. Trump's style polarized the world. Some saw a master strategist bending global markets to his will. Others saw recklessness masked as genius. In the context of U.S.-South Korea relations, this history was critical. Previous administrations had cultivated, measured, calculated approaches to trade and security. Trump brought disruption. He demanded immediate results, bold concessions, and leverage in every conversation. For South Korea, accustomed to predictable diplomacy, this meant navigating not just a trade discussion, but a psychological battleground. Every word could shift markets. Every hesitation could be interpreted as weakness. But it wasn't just his approach that commanded attention, it was his reputation. Traders, diplomats, and political commentators knew that Trump's history made him both feared and respected. Deals that seemed impossible suddenly became achievable when he pushed aggressively. Yet the same approach carried the constant risk of escalation, of tension spilling over into unintended consequences. The Oval Office, in that moment, was more than a meeting room. It was the arena of his legacy, a stage where his instincts, past victories, and controversial strategies converged. Advisors whispered about previous trade wars, about unpredictable tariffs, about headlines that had shifted economies overnight. The weight of history pressed into every corner of the room, reminding everyone present that this was not a routine negotiation. This was a man who had redefined the rules of leverage and whose reputation made the stakes feel monumental. For viewers, Trump's presence alone set the emotional tone. Some felt awe, recalling deals that seemed impossible until he executed them. Others felt anxiety, fearing that the same tactics could backfire. Every gesture, the tilt of his head, the casual clasp of hands, the slight smirk carried decades of precedent. It signaled ambition, challenge, and the ever-present possibility of surprise. And yet, the true drama of the moment wasn't merely in Trump's reputation. It was in the collision between that reputation and a determined, calculated, equally poised South Korean president. Two styles, two histories, and billions in economic influence converging in a single room. Cliffhanger. But Trump was about to discover that history and reputation alone could not predict what would unfold in the next hour. If Donald Trump's presence brought weight, audacity, and a history of high-stakes brinkmanship, the South Korean president brought an equally compelling story, one of resilience, strategy, and a rise forged through adversity. Born into a nation still navigating rapid transformation, the president's early years were defined by observation and perseverance. From modest beginnings, they learned quickly that influence was earned, not granted. Education was rigorous, competition fierce, and every opportunity required meticulous preparation. Social media exploded. Clips of the president calmly presenting facts and alternatives went viral. Analysts live-streamed commentary. Look at the composure. Look at the clarity. That is how negotiations should be conducted. Trump's strategy is being dismantled calmly, professionally, and decisively. Viewers at home felt the weight of each statement, as if sitting at the negotiation table themselves. Trump attempted a rebuttal, but the president anticipated every counterpoint. Each argument he offered was met with evidence-backed responses, a demonstration of preparation and poise that underscored decades of experience navigating complex political and economic landscapes. The president's crescendo arrived with a carefully constructed statement of principle. True strength, they said, is not measured by immediate concessions extracted or by loud declarations of dominance. It is measured by vision, by foresight, and by the ability to create agreements that endure. History remembers those who negotiate with wisdom, not just with power. The room exhaled collectively. Even Trump, for all his confidence and historical victories, sat back, momentarily silent, the tension of the moment settling like a heavy fog. Analysts, advisors, and journalists alike realized the dynamic had shifted entirely. The South Korean president had seized control, not through aggression, but through poise, intellect, and strategic clarity. Every movement, every pause, every phrase was amplified by cameras, transmitted across screens worldwide, and dissected in real time by audiences eager to witness history. The president had turned a negotiation built on intimidation into a display of competence, vision, and moral authority. Cliffhanger. And as the room absorbed the shift, it became clear. The negotiation would not just conclude a trade discussion, it would redefine how global leaders measured influence, power, and strategy. The moment the South Korean president delivered the final, precise, and unflinching rebuttals, the world seemed to pause, then erupted. Clips of the negotiation flooded social media, trending instantly with hashtags like Korea Wins, Trade Masterclass, and Negotiation Redefined. Analysts replayed every second, dissecting strategy, tone, and timing. Every camera angle told the story of a historic reversal. A room dominated by Trump's reputation, now witnessing a masterful display of composure and intellect. Financial markets responded almost immediately. Analysts noted subtle shifts in stock futures, tech shares, and export forecasts. Investors debated whether this negotiation signaled a new equilibrium in U.S.-South Korea trade, or a bold recalibration of global supply chains. Headlines splashed across newspapers. South Korea turns the tables on Trump in Oval Office negotiation. Masterclass in diplomacy leaves U.S. unprepared. Historic trade talks highlight strategic brilliance. Across continents, politicians, journalists, and commentators weighed in. Some conservative outlets framed it cautiously. The president asserted their nation's interests firmly. Liberal networks celebrated it as a triumph of strategy over bluster. Opinion columns erupted with analyses of leadership styles, highlighting a stark contrast: the bold audacity of Trump versus the calm, calculated precision of his counterpart. Social media amplified the moment even further. Twitter and YouTube clips went viral, with millions of views within hours. Thought leaders, economists, and influencers praised the president's clarity and foresight. Memes circulated highlighting the composure and strategic patience that had outmaneuvered intimidation tactics. Ordinary citizens celebrated the symbolic victory, a reminder that preparation, intellect, and calm resolve could rival even the loudest displays of authority. Inside the room, the reaction was no less dramatic. Advisors on both sides paused to absorb the shift. Even Trump's most loyal supporters sensed the subtle but undeniable change in dynamics. The Oval Office, a stage usually dominated by Trump's presence, now felt like neutral territory, where skill, strategy, and composure had taken precedence over reputation alone. Beyond domestic audiences, international observers recognized a turning point. Governments across Asia, Europe, and beyond noted that negotiations could no longer be judged by theatrics or history alone. Preparation, evidence, and strategic foresight now commanded respect. Diplomats dissected the approach, noting the blend of patience, assertiveness, and subtle leverage that had achieved results without escalation. The viral explosion also carried cultural resonance. Citizens who had felt underestimated, dismissed, or overshadowed by global powers saw validation in the president's performance. The moment became a case study in resilience, demonstrating that dignity, preparation, and moral clarity could overcome intimidation and audacity, even on the world's largest stage. And yet, the most important aspect of this shockwave was subtle. The negotiation had reframed expectations. It was no longer simply about U.S.-South Korea trade. It was about the new rules of global leadership. The world had witnessed a real-time demonstration that preparation and strategy could outmatch reputation and bravado. Cliffhanger. But the president wasn't finished. They were about to deliver a closing message that would redefine not just trade, but the very principles of international negotiation. As the negotiation concluded, the Oval Office remained charged with tension. But now, it was a different kind of energy, one of clarity, respect, and insight. The South Korean president had transformed a high-stakes, pressure-filled meeting into a lesson that extended far beyond trade. They reframed the entire encounter, showing that negotiation, leadership, and influence were measured not by intimidation, reputation, or spectacle, but by preparation, composure, and strategic vision. This was never about dominance, the president said, their voice steady and deliberate, echoing through cameras and microphones. It was never about forcing concessions or proving authority. It was about creating solutions that endure, respecting mutual interests, and understanding that real power lies in foresight, fairness, and integrity. Every word resonated like a masterclass in diplomacy. Observers realized that the true victory was not merely in achieving favorable trade outcomes. It was in modeling leadership defined by clarity, ethics, and calm intelligence. For a world often dominated by aggression, bluffing, and spectacle, this moment was a beacon. The lesson extended to citizens, leaders, and negotiators alike. The president demonstrated that preparation and knowledge could rival, even surpass reputation and bravado. That courage and calm, coupled with evidence and foresight, could shift the balance of power. The audience, both domestic and international, felt inspired, validated, and empowered. Strength is not measured by the volume of your voice, the president continued, nor by the length of your accolades. True strength is the ability to stand firm, think strategically, and act with integrity when the stakes are highest. In those words lay a universal message. Whether negotiating billion-dollar trade deals, navigating everyday professional challenges, or confronting personal trials, the same principles applied. Preparation, integrity, and composure could overcome intimidation, arrogance, and history itself. The inspirational crescendo was palpable. The president's performance symbolized a new standard that diplomacy, strategy, and thoughtful leadership were not passive traits, but active instruments of influence. Every decision, every pause, every calculated response became a lesson in how to navigate complexity with dignity. For viewers worldwide, it was empowering. It was proof that intellect, courage, and clarity could challenge the most formidable opponents, and that preparation paired with ethical resolve could yield outcomes that resonate far beyond the immediate moment. And as cameras slowly pulled back, the message remained clear. This negotiation had achieved more than a trade agreement. It had redefined leadership, influence, and the moral power of strategic clarity. Cliffhanger into outro. And if you think this ends with the Oval Office doors closing, think again. The cameras powered down. The flashbulbs dimmed. But the impact of the Oval Office showdown lingered far beyond the walls of history and bureaucracy. The world had witnessed more than a negotiation. It had witnessed a masterclass in leadership, strategy, and integrity. If one calm, measured, and prepared leader can turn the balance of power on its head. The lesson resounded. Imagine what can be achieved when knowledge, foresight, and courage guide every decision. This wasn't just about U.S.-South Korea trade. It was about how influence and authority are truly measured. It was about showing that preparation and principled action can surpass legacy, reputation, or sheer force. It was proof that calm intelligence can dominate spectacle, and strategic clarity can outmatch intimidation. And now, it's our turn to apply these lessons. Subscribe, stay connected to stories where leadership, strategy, and courage make history. Share, amplify moments of intelligence, integrity, and insight so others can learn and be inspired. Comment, reflect on the choices you'd make, the negotiations you face, and how preparation and calm resolve can change outcomes. The Oval Office scene may have ended, but the principle remains. When preparation meets courage and integrity meets intellect, real change is possible. If one leader can shift the world with calm precision, imagine what each of us can achieve when we lead with clarity, courage, and conscience.